Welcome to Simplify to Scale, a show dedicated to helping you scale a high impact and high profit business that you love without all of the complexity and chaos that can keep you trapped in the day-to-day. I'm your host, Krista Grasso, and with decades of scaling experience, I know what actually works and what's just hype. So if you are done with all of the one-size-fits-all scaling advice and all of the overnight success promises, and instead you want proven practical strategies that will help you simplify operations, elevate your leadership, amplify profits, and scale sustainably, let's dive in and get started. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Simplify to Scale show. Today, we are going to be talking all about the future of small business. This is going to be the final episode in our Trends and Predictions series, but today we are taking this up to a meta level. We are going really forward-looking here. We're going pure visionary, and we are going to look at not just what trends we need to be thinking about in 2026, what tools and how AI are going to be impacting things in the next year. We are going to be looking at the future of small business over the long haul, because right now, so many conversations are happening at a very tactical level. And while there's important decisions to be made, while there's important considerations as we look to next year, what we really want to be doing is zooming way out and looking at what does this mean for small online business as a whole? How are we going to fundamentally shift the way that we structure our businesses, the way that we run our businesses, and the way that we even work with clients in the future? So just a little caveat that this is very visionary and forward-looking, so you may or may not, depending on the way that you're wired, have to temporarily suspend a little disbelief. I had a client that I used to work with who he was really great and he tried so hard to keep pace with me, but because I'm usually looking at things so far ahead, sometimes he would have to pause and say, "I don't know about this. I don't know. I trust you, so I'm going to temporarily suspend disbelief. Let's give it a try." And it would work every time. But because he tended to be much more like proof and facts and show it to me right now kind of person, it would make him so uncomfortable if I was sharing anything more forward looking with him. And he learned to just kind of trust and roll with it. And then he would see the results, and then he'd be the biggest advocate and he'd be pulling other people in as well. So if you tend to be more on the show me, I don't know that I'm going to believe it until I see it kind of side of this, I'm going to ask you to temporarily suspend disbelief and imagine this future with me, because it is going to serve you really well in your own business or in the businesses that you partner with. And if you are that visionary, if you are that big picture thinker, that very possibility based person, I'm super curious to hear how this lines up with some of what you're seeing and how you could add your own influence to this in your own business. Okay, so to kind of set the stage here, I really feel like we are very much at a pivot point in business. And you've heard me talk about this before. I've mentioned it. I think this is a really big fundamental shift, and AI is driving a lot of it, but not in the way that people might be thinking. A lot of the conversations are very tactical. Is AI going to take my job? Is AI going to replace this tool that I use? Do I need to bring in an AI agent instead of hire this person? They're very specific decisions, but they're all decisions within the construct of what your business currently is today. When what's actually going to happen is your business as it exists today is not going to be the business model of tomorrow. There is going to be a complete structural shift in the operating model for small businesses. And one of the things that I always try to share all the time on the podcast, and if you're a regular listener, you know this. If you're new here, welcome. But I always try to keep you ahead of what's coming, because I think the absolute best place that you can be in business, and if you are a regular listener of the show, I'm going to assume this fits you well, because I tend to attract people who want to be ahead of things, who want to be a part of the solution. But what you don't want to do, you don't want to be the one who gets caught off guard. You don't want to be the one who has to reactively pivot and adjust constantly based on what's happening in the world around them. And things are moving so quickly right now. I want to give you the opportunity and some things to be thinking about so you are ahead of the game. Instead of waiting for the change to be so obvious or unavoidable, You're proactively thinking about and making some changes now that are going to prepare you for that sustainability and simplicity that we ultimately want as you scale in the future. And just to back things up a bit, one of the questions I get asked all of the time, and Jessica and I had recorded a whole podcast episode on this. I ended up not releasing it because we had some audio issues. I wish we had it. I might take a couple clips from it and weave it into something that I put out on socials. But she had asked me and said, one of the questions that I get from all of our clients is, how do you always know what's coming? Like, how do you know? You seem to always be 10 steps ahead of the changes that are happening in the market. And I get asked this question from our clients all the time is, how does Krista know this stuff? And so I'm going to share with you what I had said to her on that episode. And I really wish that recording was something that I could share because it was a really, really great discussion that we have. But apparently it was not meant to be. So there's two things that are going on. First of all is I am naturally very good at just spotting patterns. And when you combine the fact that I can very easily spot patterns, I'm a natural systems ecosystems thinker. So I kind of see how all the parts and pieces connect together. And you blend that with the fact that I have run a small business since the mid 90s. I've built, grown, and scaled 8 of my own businesses since the mid 90s. And I've worked with thousands of other small businesses during that time. So if you just simply think about the longevity that I have had in the game of small business, combined with my natural ability to see patterns and see trends and pick up on things, I can see the cycles that are happening in the market. I can see the subtle cues and the subtle shifts in things that are changing. Now, technology, of course, moves so quick. It's not like I know what tool is going to be released next week or next month or next year, but I can see the patterns of what's coming. But the other thing, and this is the thing that is a little bit of my secret sauce, the thing that I will say makes me pretty different from a lot of other people who help businesses with scaling or who help businesses with the things that I do is I have always worked two parallel paths. So in addition to the work that I do with small business and in addition to the work I do in my own small businesses, I also scale large businesses. I work with the largest businesses in the world, and I've done this since 2000. So based on when you're listening to this, it's about 25, 26 years now that I've been partnering with Fortune 500, Fortune 50, sometimes Fortune 10 companies and helping them simplify and scale right alongside the work I'm doing with small businesses. And so it gives me a unique vantage point that not everyone has. But here's what most small business owners don't realize, and this is really important. Small businesses lag behind big businesses. Most small business owners don't realize that most of the strategies that they're taught, most of the structures that they're told to follow, the operating systems that they're taught, the team structures that they're taught, the planning cadences that they're taught, the communication and meeting cadences that they're taught, the departments that they're taught, the whole way that people are taught to build and run and grow and scale a small business come out of corporate. Now, the person that taught it to you, they might not have come out of corporate. They might not even know that it came out of corporate. The person that taught them might not know it came out of corporate, and the person that taught them might not know it came out of corporate. But the reality is, small business follows big business and it lags behind big business. So I know what's going to happen in small business because I've already done it in a big business. It's easy to look at these large scale corporations, these very successful businesses, and say, well, this worked really well for them. So why wouldn't we do it in a small business? But what most people don't realize is context is everything. And something that works for a business with thousands of employees is not going to necessarily be the same as a business with a dozen or less employees, right? Sometimes the principles apply, but the practices and the way you do things need to be adapted and need to be different. This is what I do in my lean scaling system. I take the principles that make sense and I adapt them with practices that are very right sized and very applicable for a small scaling online business. But that being said, what most people don't realize, even beyond that, is that most of the practices that they're following, most of the things that they're doing that they did not even realize originated in big business, are not the things that big businesses are still doing. They have learned that there is a much better, much more efficient, much more effective, more lean, more agile way of working. And this is a lot of the work that I do with big businesses. I actually am there unwinding the structures that they've had in place for, in some cases, centuries and modernizing the way that they're working. I'm preparing them for the business models of the future. I am completely shifting the way that they are looking at and leading and thinking about teams. I'm shifting the way that they bring products to market. I'm shifting the way that they plan, the way that they achieve goals and financial targets. And I'm completely shifting the way that they operationally run their business. So small businesses are not only following models that are way too overcomplex and not right-sized and don't fit them, but they're also following antiquated and outdated models that the big businesses don't even follow anymore because they get that the market is shifting. They get that there are changes coming. And so when you see these mass layoffs and when you see these big announcements that are coming, it's not just because AI is taking someone's job. It's that they get what small businesses don't get yet. And that is that business as we know it looks different in the future. The way that you sell, the way that people make buying decisions, it's never going back to what it was before. It fundamentally looks different in the future. And so small business follows big business. And the irony is so many people left big business because they didn't like the corporate culture. They didn't like the environment. They wanted to be able to do things their own way. They wanted to be their own boss. They wanted to make an impact. They wanted to get rid of so much of the bureaucracy and the BS that came with a big business. And then they inadvertently repeat and recreate the same structures that created those things in the first place without recognizing it because almost every model on the market is based on big business. And again, I only know this because this is literally what I do all day, every day, and have for 25, 26 years now. So I'm the person the big business calls when they want to modernize and when they want to scale more quickly and when they want to simplify the way that they're working and reimagine and break free from a lot of those antiquated models. That is what is coming for small business. Small business is going to look different. Things like AI, that's accelerating it. And so I'll give a fun story with one of the large scale clients that I had worked with is a few years back, I was actually working on self-driving cars before they ever made it into the market. And recently I was out in Austin and I drove in my first self-driving car. So, depending on where you are in the world, this might be old news to you. Or, like me, maybe you have not had the opportunity to do this yet, or it's still relatively new for you. So that experience, it was wild. It was weird. The first time we were in the car, I was with a group of people and it was kind of fun. We're all doing our little videos for Instagram to be like, look, we're in the car. There's no one driving, right? It was kind of neat. And then I took one by myself in the middle of the night and it was just creepy and a little weird. I'm sitting in a car that's completely driving itself all by myself. There's no one to talk to. It's eerily quiet. The car is just doing its own thing. I'm hoping it's gonna take me wherever the heck it's supposed to take me, right? It was a little bit of an odd experience, but it was kinda cool. It was novel because that is not common for me today, right now when I'm recording this. I have not moved to Austin yet. I am still in Connecticut. I live in the middle of the woods. I'm much more likely to see a deer all day long than I am a self-driving car. So it was kinda cool and kind of full circle to be in the self-driving car when I had worked on them at one of the companies that I had consulted with a few years back. But here's the thing that's interesting, right? As self-driving cars become more prevalent, as they become more something that is normal, first it'll happen in bigger cities, then it'll start to expand out. But if you think about the conversation, what's one of the very first things people are going to say? Is this going to replace Uber drivers? That's an obvious question, but honestly, it's kind of the least interesting one. Because yes, absolutely. It's all about supply and demand, right? There's always going to be somebody who is going to want an actual driver. So it's not that there will never, ever be drivers again in the future. But as there are more self driving cars, there is going to be less demand for people driving cars. And therefore, if your career is one of driving cars, it might be worth it to be reconsidering some other options or coming up with some kind of specialty so you're the one that somebody chooses when they want someone to drive a car for them. But that being said, let's take this up again to the meta level because that is not the most interesting question. The real shift is, how is transportation itself going to change? When driving is no longer how you get where you need to go, what does that do? Right, fast forward 10 years, fast forward 30 years, fast forward 50 years. What does that look like? Is every car on the road gonna be a self-driving car? Are cars even gonna be on the road? Or are we gonna live in a sci-fi movie where the cars are more little flying vehicles than they are something that drive on a street? Whichever path it takes, the reality is that commutes are going to completely change. Cities are going to change. Time's gonna get used differently. If you don't have to be behind the wheel driving, think about what you could do while you are in that car. Entire industries are going to reshape themselves. So, yes, will people who drive cars lose jobs? Absolutely. But there are going to be jobs that are available that we can't even imagine yet because that future does not exist yet. And so I wanted to share this as an example because I think it's one we've seen so many movies. It always makes me think back to Blade Runner, which used to be one of my favorite movies when I was in college. But the idea of a self-driving car used to be super sci-fi. Now it's actually something that you can go and call one from your app on your phone and have one pick you up depending on where you are in the world. And that technology will just keep advancing and keep expanding, and that changes the entire environment that everything operates within. It's no longer a question of, will this replace the driver? It's more, how does the entire way that we commute and travel and think about getting from one point to another and invest time in getting from one point to another completely transform? It literally will shift the way that we build streets and build cities. It's kind of wild to really think about because the exact same thing is happening in small business. It's not, is AI going to take my job? It's, how is the way that business is structured going to fundamentally shift? If you think about small businesses today, so much of that is built around people doing work. There's people that are on the team who are there to get a job done. They're there to achieve a particular outcome. Teams exist and work together to deliver on those outcomes. And leaders exist to manage those people and ensure that those outcomes are delivered and have the impact that's expected. So you've got people doing work individually and collectively as teams, and you've got leaders who are orchestrating all of it, managing the people, leading the team, ensuring that the business is moving forward towards the vision and goals that are set. It doesn't really matter what you do. The structure of your business is pretty consistent in the sense that you've got something you're trying to achieve, and you typically have a combination of people and technology supported by processes and systems and leaders and things of that nature. But you've got people and you've got technology that enable you to achieve what you're trying to achieve in your business. That enables you to have a profitable business. It enables you to have an impactful business. And those things are what enable the people who work with you, who buy your programs, who invest in your services, who participate in what you do to achieve the results that they're looking for. They also are usually supported by some kind of people in some kind of tools and technology. And the further back you rewind in time, the more it was people. The further into the future, the more technology and automation ends up being able to do some of those things. But if you think about how AI is becoming capable of handling so much more of the execution-based activities that we talk about week over week on the podcast, the center of gravity itself shifts quite a bit. The business isn't built around humans performing tasks or doing work. It's built around orchestration. It's much more that ability to be able to orchestrate the moving parts and achieve outcomes. It's people being able to set direction, make decisions, design actual systems that work, ecosystems that work together, and then orchestrate those outcomes. This is a lot of what you've heard me talk about before. It's a lot of that strategic leadership. It's a lot of why I put in place both the lean scaling system and my certification program to teach people how to be more strategic thinkers, more ecosystem thinkers, and to be the person who understands how all of the puzzle pieces of the business need to fit together, and the person who's able to orchestrate everything and everyone that's needed to get done. You've heard me talk about this for a long time, so that's not something new. However, it's something new to a lot of businesses. A lot of other people aren't thinking that way. They're still very much in service delivery mode. They're still very much, I'm going to sell my time for money. So they're either doing more hourly type billing or more project type billing, or even if they have retainers, they are still much more deliverable based in what they're doing, more kind of, I will do this, this, and this versus really grounding what they're doing in outcomes. And so we've been really leading some of this charge and shifting how people are thinking about this. But it goes so much beyond even what we've been talking about so far. In the future, small businesses are not going to be run by teams in the way that we understand them today. And now I'm going to give you a couple caveats because it really depends on the level that we're talking about here. So let's say you have a team and you have coaches who work directly with your clients. Well, there is still going to be a need for that type of container. I think actually, as I've talked about in some of the prior episodes, that kind of transformational experiential thing is going to be more in demand in the future. So if you have people that you're bringing on at that very strategic, very depth of experience level who do some kind of personalized one-on-one work with people or some kind of more transformational work with people, yes, absolutely. Those people may still be very necessary in the future. But if you think about the people that you have who do the majority of the work in the business to run the business, that type of work is the work that I'm really talking about is fundamentally shifting, and your teams are going to get incredibly lean because the things that people used to do at an execution level, even in a lot of cases at a strategic execution level, even some at a strategy level. When you go up the pyramid, a lot of the different layers of the pyramid, starting at the bottom of the four tiers of the pyramid on up, are going to increasingly be able to be done from a more technology based solution as opposed to a more human based solution. And so the business is gonna be run by systems, not by people. And people are going to instead be more that critical point of discernment. They're gonna be the decision maker. They're gonna be the one who runs intervention. They're gonna be architecting what's needed, and they're gonna be intervening to make sure that what's happening is actually producing the desired results. In most businesses today, someone has to move things forward. They have to create the plan. They have to manage the people. They have to follow up with people. They have to gather the thing. They have to remember different things. They have to make sure that all the things are actually executed. They have to check for errors. They have to fix those issues. They have to hold all of the context of all of the different things. Even in a business that considers itself to be systems driven, it is very human operating system based. It is very human based at the core of it. And the team ends up being more of a production engine. It's like, how efficient and how effective can my team be? How much can they produce? And there's a lot that you can do to optimize that. It's part of my lean scaling system. I help people be much more productive. I help them make sure they're focused on the right things. I help them make sure they're eliminating waste, right? All of that, if you have people doing work, those things are very important. But the difference in the future is that it's not going to be dependent on people doing work as much. And that in and of itself is what changes everything. The team itself is not the engine of the business. The team is much more the decision infrastructure. You need people who have the discernment and the ability to make the right decisions, to move the business forward, to orchestrate the right technologies. They're the ones who know when something needs to change. They can look at and clearly see that something is no longer the right direction, or that the system is not producing the outcome that you want, or that the outcome it's producing no longer fits the direction you're trying to take the business. And yes, it's very much a strategic lens, but it's more that person who can spot the patterns and can spot the signals. It's the person who understands things so fundamentally that they know what's working, they know what's not, and they know how to make decisions in the face of uncertainty. There's less meetings, there's less check-ins, there's less handoffs, there's less status updates because there's less people. But that also means then you're putting a lot of your eggs in a few very specific people. And so those people need to be really highly skilled. They need to understand constraints. They need to be able to spot where the business can't move beyond where it currently is. And they need to know how to orchestrate the ability to remove those constraints. When I say teams are changing, and when I say the future of small business is strategic, the future of operations is strategic, don't mistake that for something that's not that significant or impactful, right? Teams tomorrow are not just smaller teams of the team that you have today. Yes, technically you might have less people, but it's that the entire structure is different. And when that structure is different, it has a ripple effect and an impact in ways that I'm not sure people can grasp or wrap their head around yet. It will impact every single facet of small business, not just how you run what you do, but how you work with your clients, how people get results, what they need from you, how things are priced, how things are packaged, how things are positioned, right? In most services, there's a strategy that gets done and there's an implementation that gets done. Sometimes that implementation is done by you, and sometimes that implementation is done by the client with a handoff between you and them. So I want you to think for a moment in your business. Where do people not get results? You know that what you do produces incredible results, but not everyone gets those results, and why? It's usually because people don't take action. It's because they don't follow through. It's because they had the best of intentions, but they got busy, or they ended up not having capacity. There's a number of reasons why, but it usually comes down to the fact that people were not able to follow through, or people were not able to take action consistently. Well, think about when your clients have a very lean team. And I'm going to break down in a moment what that team might look like. But when they have a much leaner team, when they have less support, when they're relying more on technology to do things they used to have people able to support them to do, how does that influence the results that they are able to get from the work that you do with them? If you were one who focused more on the strategy side of things and handed things off to them to implement, or you were one who helped more with planning and their team went off and implemented, well, what happens when they no longer have those people who are able to take that action? How does that shift what you need to deliver to them for them to be successful? Do you take on some of the implementation, or is some of what you're doing shifting more to be able to enable the technology and the tools that they're currently using? So, what do teams look like in the future, and what are some of the absolute most in demand roles? So, I'm going to break down a couple different models here. And again, I just want to caveat this by saying this is very much looking at the people who do the majority of the work on your team. This is not looking at those very strategic people who work really closely with your clients in more of a coaching or consulting capacity, or the deep specialists that you might need to bring in for something specific. That's separate from this. I'm talking more about the team that you're building out that helps you execute what you do day to day. The team who does your operations, your marketing, all of the kind of routine things that keep your business running and growing outside of the work that you're doing more personally working one-on-one with clients. So with that being said, I see a couple different models, and I'm going to break this down to say that there are going to be more businesses that are capable of hitting seven figures, multi seven figures, even in some cases eight, with two or three actual humans on their team, and then some really strong tools, technology, systems, and AI agents supporting them. This is going to look a little bit different as teams get more lean and as technology continues to be able to do a lot more and continues to be able to simplify down so much of the way that we work, which are some of the things I covered in prior episodes in this series. So I'm not going to go too deep into that. But the, I think, most critical role of all in the future, and again, I shared in this episode how I can spot patterns and I tend to be forward thinking and ahead of things. And so, probably no surprise to you that that role is the role that I'm currently certifying people in as a chief strategy and operating officer. And it's because not only has this role always been super important, in a role that founders have always wished existed and struggle to find, but I think it's going to become increasingly critical as we look to the future. Because if the founder themselves is in a place of envisioning, they are in a place of imagining this incredible future for their clients, for the impact that they want to make, and they don't themselves want to be involved in the day to day of actually making it happen. They themselves do not necessarily want to be the one who's building out AI agents and orchestrating all the different moving pieces and coordinating all the different parts of the business. Well, who do they need to do that? They need a really strong, really strategic right hand person who is skilled at scaling and who understands technology in a way that they know how and where to leverage things like AI agents. They know which tech stack is going to be the simplest and the one that's going to not only get them where they want to go next, but that's going to be sustainable as they look to the future. And so that particular role is that very strategic ecosystems thinker, that person who knows how to architect things, not necessarily just implement things. And that is where the CSOO comes into play. Again, that is a chief strategy and operating officer. They learn our lean scaling system, which is all of the different facets of what it takes to sustainably and simply scale a business. And they understand how to think like a founder. They understand how to take a founder's vision and actually be able to make that a reality. And they are smart enough, they are savvy enough, and they are strategic enough to be able to adapt the ways that they get there based on what's happening in the market and what changes are coming from a technology perspective. They are not someone who is locked into a very prescriptive, must do things one way and one way only kind of thinking that a lot of other people are. They also have a depth and breadth where they understand the full scope of the business and how the entire puzzle fits together. They are not only laser focused in on the operational run the business aspects of things. Because if you are the founder of your business, if you are the visionary in your business and you do truly want freedom and to be able to step back, well, you need somebody who understands the full big picture and how everything fits together and who can orchestrate everything. And this spans all of the functions in the business. Now, this person is not going to be a deep expert in all of those because they're not the doer. They are not the ones that's rolling up their sleeves and doing the things. They're the one that understands and orchestrates and architects what's needed. And so that's why I believe in the future, the CSOO role is going to be the absolute most critical role any single small business can have. And that spans any kind of service based business. That's why I made the move to really double down on focusing on this and to expand this out, which I'm going to be continuing to do in 2026 and beyond. Because I want to help small businesses be as successful as possible. I want to help them be able to leverage these changes that are coming in a way that amplifies their success instead of derailing it. And the best way to do that is to create the system that makes it possible, which is the lean scaling system, and to teach the people who are actually going to make it happen day to day in the business, not only what's coming, not only what's needed, but most importantly, how to think and how to adapt as these changes keep moving and keep moving really rapidly. So if you do not yet have a CSOO, you are absolutely going to want to be thinking about getting one as you look to the future. And if you are someone who partners with other businesses, this is where you will want to become a CSOO. Now, CSOO is just what I call it. You don't have to call yourself that. You can call yourself whatever you want to call yourself. But at the end of the day, it's more about the skill and the strategic thinking ability to be able to help a business successfully scale in not only the future of small business, but the person who can do so today and can bridge where businesses are today to what's going to be needed as we look out another 5, 10 plus years. So there's a lot of businesses that are going to be able to get again to 7, multi 7, even 8 figures with a team that simple. But there's gonna be others, especially in the online business space, where they're very content heavy type of businesses, very thought leadership oriented type businesses, especially those who want to truly distinguish themselves and stand out and not just have a bunch of AI noise getting published to their feeds and in their online presence. And in this type of model, the CSOO is still at the center of it if the founder does not want to be involved in the day to day of everything. But there's also two other roles that I see as being really critical. One is more of that marketing orchestrator, and one is more of that operational orchestrator. So if the CSOO is the one who is looking big picture across everything and architecting what's needed, the operational and marketing focused orchestrator is the one who's actually making sure it's happening. They're the ones who are actually implementing and leading the AI agents that are doing the work and creating things. They're the one who is that discernment and the decision making and who can spot where things are going off track or where things are not really sounding like the unique, differentiated thought leadership content that you're wanting to put out on the marketing side, or where client experience and results are starting to suffer, or things are not taking you where the business needs to go next on the operational side. And so, what that looks like, if you think of the Lean Dream Team pyramid that you hear me talk about often, is you still are squarely in the space of vision. With that CSOO in place, they're able to be focused more on the strategy layer in collaboration with you and strategic execution in collaboration with the marketing and the operational orchestrators. And those orchestrators are very much at a strategic execution level, with all of the execution being done by technology, including AI agents. And there may be other specialists that you need to bring in from time to time, depending on what you're doing, but your core team, your actual Lean Dream Team, that's what it's going to look like in the future for a lot of online service-based businesses. The operational orchestrator is what I call a scalable ops manager. And on the marketing side, it's what I call a scalable growth manager. And they all will need a lot of the skills and the thinking patterns that I've been describing so far in this episode. And those are all the things that we specialize in at Strategic Ops Institute. So if you have people that you know are capable, but who need to be up-leveled or who could use some mentorship and some training to expand the way that they're thinking and what they can see as possible, just send them to us. If you need to hire someone, just come to us. And as we continue to move people through our certification programs, we will have more and more people who are vetted and ready to go and ready to step in and support and work with you. But the reason this is my focus is because I see this as the future of small business and this being what businesses will need as the structure underneath small business shifts to this type of model. And again, I know this can be hard to imagine today, especially if you have a big team today, but this will increasingly become the norm. And so at this point, you might be thinking a few different things. A, you might be thinking, I've completely lost my mind, and I respect that. I find that a lot of times when I share things like this, I can be a little too early for some people, and they're not yet ready to hear it, or they can't quite imagine it being possible yet. And that's fine. Like I said, you're not going to wake up tomorrow and these changes are going to be in place. This is something I am very much future focused here. I'm looking forward. And I'm doing that intentionally because I think you have a unique opportunity to get ahead of it. Now, another thing you might be thinking is, do I need to change everything I'm doing right now? No, absolutely not. Again, that's why I wanted to share this now, to give you the opportunity to get ahead of it. But the other thing, the thing that I hope you're thinking, the thing that I hope you're feeling is a spirit of possibility. I hope you're looking at this and recognizing it for the incredible opportunity that it is. I hope you're seeing that so many people have blinders on and are so tactically focused about, is AI going to replace my job or is this going to replace this, that they are not seeing the bigger picture. They are not seeing the true implications of what's happening in the fundamental shift to the structure of how we work as small business owners. And that gives you the unique opportunity to not only get ahead of it, to position yourself differently, and more importantly, to shape what actually happens. We have the ability in small business to have so much influence on our industries, on our markets. We are all here to make an incredible impact. Yes, we want to run a profitable business for sure, but most of us are super passion fueled. We're super impact driven. And part of being able to make that impact is shaping what these things mean for our industry. It's a little bit like the Wild West a bit with some of the AI changes and how quickly things are moving. You have so much opportunity to leverage this for incredible good and incredible impact for the people that you work with and the people that you are so passionate about helping to achieve the results and the transformation that they're looking for. I know that is so much of what I am doing with Strategic Ops Institute, with Lean Scaling Co. I want to see small business owners be so incredibly successful by recognizing that the future is strategic, by positioning themselves as the strategic thinkers and architects of the future that are going to be increasingly needed. And I think the key is, don't wait for this to happen. Don't wait to get caught off guard or to react. Look now at some of the changes that are coming and strategically and proactively invest in developing yourself and developing your team. This isn't about what you do, it's about how you think. One of the things that I say all the time to people is, people come to me for my systems, they come to me for my methods, they come to me for a lot of it. But what they don't quite realize they're getting when they work with me is, yeah, I give them all of that. But really what I do is I teach people how to think. I teach people how to be strategic thinkers. I teach people how to spot patterns. I teach people how to connect dots that other people don't see. And when you understand how to truly think and how to be a strategic thinker and an ecosystems thinker, you're able to solve problems and spot things that other people just can't even comprehend yet. And it makes you so incredibly valuable, because that is what a small business founder needs. They need someone who can not only take ownership, but someone who deeply understands what it's going to take to make their vision possible, and to make their vision possible given the constraints of the market and the conditions that are changing around them. If any of this was of intrigue at all to you and you could start to see this future, the one thing to do as a takeaway from this episode is invest in how you think. Up-level how you think. If you're looking for a place to do that, I invite you to join me in my certification program. This is where we go really deeply into this, but this is also what we do inside our Soul Collective community. So we have opportunities to match where you're at right now. Just check out the links in the show notes for more info. I hope this helped you think about the future of small business in a little bit of a different way, and to look more to the future of what will be coming over the next several years. I wish you an incredibly happy new year, and I hope 2026 as wildly profitable and impactful as possible for you and your business. I will see you again next week. Thanks so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Simplify to Scale. If you'd like to take things further, I invite you to join me for my Scale Smarter, Not Harder interactive workshop. Head to strategicopsinstitute.com/scale-smarter to get registered. Not only will we dive into what might be keeping you trapped in the day-to-day, but you'll have the opportunity to ask me your questions live. If you got value out of today's episode, I'd love if you'd take a moment and rate and review the show so more businesses can learn to scale more simply and sustainably. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and I'll see you again next week.